Today we continue on our Sutta Exploration series by revisiting the connected or linked discourses. This one comes to us from the Salayatana Samyutta, which is the group of connected discourses dedicated to the theme of the six sense spheres or six sense spaces. The sutta number is 35.93, so SN 35.93. It is the Dutiya Dvayam Sutta. Dva means, eka means one, dva means two. And Dvayam in this case means a dyad. A dyad. Twins, you can think of. Oftentimes you've heard me say or bring up topics that deal with the importance of understanding as to what happens first. You know, sometimes people say the Dhamma that Lord Buddha taught has everything to do with science. Although that might be misplaced or overzealous kind of a conclusion. But in many cases, it does have its reasoning, because in science, we are taught to always look, or using the scientific method, we're always wondering what happens first. What happens first? And that approach itself is what we also use for vipassana, to analyze, to understand. Instead of taking things for granted, instead of just believing in things the way that they have, or society, or our own delusion have led us to believe that this is how it is. Well, why is that? Which today's society is moving away from, asking questions like, why is that? That's courageous, you know, to stop and not to be argumentative or contentious, you know, but it's something we owe to ourselves. And that's what the Dhamma that Lord Buddha taught always inculcates in us, to encourage in us to, you know, hold on, just pause, ask. This phenomena, this thing rather, this feeling I'm having right now, did it just show up like that? It doesn't. It requires other factors. And although over centuries people have complicated Buddhism or the Dhamma, where people have just relinquished it, the whole path, and chosen something easier, turned it into a faith-based religion type of a thing. That's not the Dhamma. So, but it doesn't have to be complicated, like when people talk about the paticca samuppada, or the dependent co-arising or dependent origination, the principle that tells us that everything is being caused by other factors. It's conditionally based. Now, if I could bring that into this heavy experience of this emotion that I'm having, that gives me a room to breathe, at least. Because that means that I am temporarily pausing on really being driven crazy with this emotion, or whatever it's leading me on to feel, and to really more and more relinquish more of my sanity and definitely my mindfulness, and ask, what happened first? Was there a contact somewhere? Did I see something? Did I hear something? Did I observe something prior to me experiencing this intense heat? For example, it could be anger. or where you feel like very like fluttery, you're like a butterfly. Okay, I wasn't feeling so good, now I'm feeling good. Let me be curious enough to ask what happened. That curiosity is at the basis of wisdom. A few weeks ago, when I was in Australia, a week ago, I think, I was at a gathering, and a child was asking what or someone was asking what could my message be to children, and I looked at the children who were there, and I said, please, 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 don't lose your curiosity, your imagination. As adults, we're like, yeah, it comes with the territory. Being an adult equals not having imagination, equals not having curiosity. Who said that? We do reaffirm that every day in our lives. Oh, those were the good old days. We can't become like that anymore. Am I breathing? Is there air in my lungs? Do I have, the ability to reason? Then of course I can experience a curious approach in life. And that is my attempt throughout these suttas that I share with you, by going back into the Nikāyas and then looking at what suttas could best support you in your own practice. And practice, remember, it's not simply the sitting practice. That is a small, minuscule part, a very important part, yes, because it allows you to center, to gather your forces, as it were, forces for awakening, forces for wisdom, to become more of a reality in your life. So these suttas are there to support us. So with that mindset, we approach these teachings, and to find relevance, and they are absolutely 100% relevant to our lives. So try to see where you could be able to place a one or two, even if you could just take one single message from any of these suttas, just one. So far, I've covered probably hundreds of suttas. 60, this would be, I think, 60, week number 61. Just 61 with these series. But if you could just remember one thing that you could apply in your day, that would be just remarkable. That would be wonderful. So the Dyad, part 2, that's where the Dutiya part comes in. Dutiya Dvayam Sutta. Paññā would be the first, part 1. So this would be the second part, because there's 2 suttas with this title back to back. So let us begin. Bhikkhu's consciousness is conditioned by 2 things coming together. Hence, it depends on a dyad. 2 things. If you lean, when we were kids, we used to play with, the adults would play cards, and I didn't care much about the playing of the cards. I just couldn't wait for them to stop playing, and I would just get those cards and start building things. So I would lean them against one another, and it would be so challengingly beautiful, that those few seconds where they would lean against each other, it's like, mom, come, stop, it's not falling, it collapses. But think of that as a dyad. Consciousness, we just think of it as, it's on its own. It exists. Nothing exists like that in Buddhism. If you could just take that, there's nothing that exists on its own, stands on its own. We say that in the English language. Nothing stands on its own. It's all conditioned. So, and what might this dyad be, bhikkhus, wherein a consciousness is conditioned by the coming together of 2 things? It is when remember, in Buddhism we have 6 consciousnesses, generally speaking. and they correspond to the six sense doors. That's why, if you noticed, I mentioned this comes to us, this discourse comes to us from the collection that is dedicated to the theme of the six sense bases. So when Lord Buddha is talking about the dyad in this case, he is also trying to show us the importance of understanding these consciousnesses. So please don't equate, even though I'm using the word consciousness, don't equate that with the Western, or typically in pop culture, what consciousness represents. So this is different than what, what usually is understood in society. So we have six consciousnesses that correspond to the five senses that and the mind as number six. So it is when the I and visible forms come together that the I consciousness arises. The I is impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. Visible forms are similarly impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. See? We're always trying to construct things. Even that image I gave you of my childhood leaning those two pieces of, cards against each other. I was trying so hard to see something to be unshifting, shiftless, life that doesn't move, especially if it's something that we like to see. Oh, I'm seeing this beautiful sunset. Oh, wait, the sun is going down the horizon. No, please wait, I need to take a better shot. Oh, I need to call somebody over. Look, it's gone. And you can provide countless examples, I'm sure, from your own life where we wanted to hold on to things, but things are ever changing. And in this case, Lord Buddha is talking about the I. The I. And the I doesn't function on its own, It's not by itself in a vacuum. We have the I as a sense base. We normally call it the internal, meaning it is right here within this form, within this nama rupa. That's why it's called the internal base. So the I and the object which the I sees, a functioning I, by the way. So when you have these two come together, then you have I consciousness. So now you're beginning to understand what the dyad is referring to. And because this dyad is constantly moving, insecure and unreliable, it remains ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting in its nature. Why is it shifting? Well, the sun, or this bright, beautiful full moon that you're looking at in the sky, the night sky, and you call someone over, hey, come, check this out, it's so beautiful. And then at that moment, a cloud comes in front. What happened? A beautiful scene. The inspiring image is now no longer there. Unreliable. Ever-changing. So sometimes we want to avoid, or even when I constantly mention the importance of looking at the physical body, when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, yeah, sure, Bhante, we accept that. But when it comes to outside experiences, like the moon, for example, that for some reason hits home harder for many of us because we can immediately relate. But for some reason, we as human beings try to look away, or rather ignore, that knee pain that we've been having, or the neck pain, or physical changes, the skin coloration, pigmentation, all these things as we grow older. So shifting. So looking at all of these things instead of just one and not the other allows us to really expand our understanding of this shifting nature and completely conditional reality that we live in. As a consequence, the I consciousness too, which is the result of this dyad coming together, is inescapably ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting, just exactly as its causes are, namely the I and its visible forms. So even the consciousness that resulted from these two coming together, the I and the forms, that itself, the I consciousness itself, is changing. Giving you an example, you are looking at the sun, it's beautiful, it's reddish orange, and it's drifting and it's dissolving behind the horizon, and you're completely captivated by that. And suddenly there's a noise, or somebody steps on your toes on the beach as you're looking at that sunset. What happened? The I consciousness just shifted. Now you have ear consciousness or body consciousness coming into the foreground of your experience. Unreliable. Nothing, none of these stays. And that's what Lord Buddha is trying to wake us up to, the realization of. Therefore, bhikkhus, since the I consciousness has arisen by depending on a set of conditions that are by their very nature impermanent, then how could it be permanent itself? So if the I is impermanent, it's shifting. At the very least, it shifts its attention, right? It was looking at the sunset, but in the next moment, it might actually be looking at the stars that are showing up, Venus maybe, or looking down and seeing someone else over there. It's shifting. And the object too shifts, as I was giving you the example of the sun, but that shifts as well. So the I is shifting, the object it's looking at is shifting, and because these two shift, the consciousness that these two are, in a sense, responsible for also shifts. None of them then is permanent. Now, bhikkhus, the triggering, the coming together, the uniting of these three things is called eye contact. Because these three came together, eye forms, visible forms, and the consciousness that produced, because of these two, nothing is produced in a sense, but they are coming together because of these two dyads and consciousness showing up. Now you bring these three together, then you have eye contact. Now this is something that's happening very quickly. Very, very quickly. And that's why we sit and meditate, by the way. With practice, you'll get to see, you'll get to understand. You won't be overwhelmed by the feeling that is produced by the contact. That's why I was saying, can we stay or can we remain curious enough to look as to what's happening? Let me look at this a little bit with a little bit more scrutiny. Now, the bhikkhus, the triggering, the coming together, the uniting of these three things is called eye contact. And eye contact is also impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. Because the causes and conditions for the arising of eye contact are also impermanent. Because every single factor that came or preceded it, eye contact being impermanent, how could it be permanent? But we as human beings are always looking for permanency. We're looking for permanent reality, especially something that is making us feel good. We want to see that it is permanent, but nothing can be permanent because the causes of all these things, in this case that we see, all of these things put together, each of them are impermanent to begin with. And they're ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. And therefore, bhikkhus, since the eye contact has arisen by depending on a set of conditions that are by their very nature impermanent, then how could it be permanent itself? So the eye contact is also impermanent. Now, bhikkhus, once contact occurs, one then feels triggered by the contact. We get to feel things not in a vacuum, not out of the blue, without something happening. No, there needs to be triggered the contact, the thing that causes us to feel something. It must be triggered by contact. One perceives triggered by the contact. Perception takes place. Let's say next time you're having a memory, always oh yes, you're being nostalgic about, oh yes, that time. Hold on, take a breather, look at the memory and ask yourself, what did that, or what was the trigger for the memory to show up? One perceives, one remembers, basically, triggered by the contact. And one goes on intending, triggered by the contact. Next time you're thinking about something, you're thinking, or you're having goals, you're having intentions. Yes, now I'm going to put on my shoes, or I'm going to go out and drive in that direction, or I'm going to say this. All of these things are linked up in a chain, all of which are triggered by contact. Lord Buddha says, Putto bhikkhave vedeti. When it is triggered by contact, the person starts to feel. Similarly, Putto bhikkhave sanjanati. The person perceives, triggered by the contact. Putto bhikkhave ceteti. Triggered by the contact, again, the person intends. Therefore, all these phenomena are in a state of perpetual flux, constantly moving, insecure, and unreliable, for they are ever changing, inevitably transforming and shifting in their nature. In order for us to become, awakened, you don't have to use all the six senses. Use any one of them. Use any particular aspect of them. In this case, just the contact portion can do it, can do the job, to make you pause, to understand. So this was simply the I consciousness, Dyad. Because it's coming again with the six senses, so we're going to have to go through all the other senses, because not everyone is, going to be triggered the same way every single time. Meaning, sometimes what is in focus is the I consciousness. At other times, it's your palate, it's your taste buds, or your nose, or your ears. At times, your ears are going to be you're going to be much more sensitive to contact being made with the ear, meaning ear consciousness. So that's why Lord Buddha never was, frugal with the manners with which he taught, explained things. He would resort to so many different ways of giving us examples so that it would click. So think of these teachings in that way as well. Similarly, when the ear and audible sounds come together, the ear consciousness arises. But the ear is impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting, while audible sounds are also impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. Now remember, what I didn't mention is about, the importance of attention. Attention. Sometimes someone is speaking to us, but because we are inattentive, even if they're looking at us, in front of us, the eye is there, the ear is there, but the attention is missing. We don't even pick up on what's being said. So when Lord Buddha, other places he actually talks about, and in fact, many places he talks about the importance of manasikara, attention. So please don't negate that, because the eye might be functioning well, the sounds are there, but this would happen to me years ago when I would drive, let's say, from Los Angeles down to Orange County, which would be about 45, 50 minutes drive without traffic. So I noticed this, and it was shocking. I would get in the car, and head off and reach my destination. And all of a sudden, I would just open my eyes, in a sense. I was like, how did I even get here? Then I have to play the memory, go access the memory, and I would see what I did here, this and that. But in essence, I was totally oblivious to it. There was no mindfulness. There was no attention. So I saw many things, but it was just completely, almost like in a dream state. But we live like that our 24 hours, or at least the waking time. We live like that. So the attention has to also be brought into focus in order for there to be true ear consciousness. But the ear is impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting, while audible sounds are also impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. And because this dyad is constantly moving, insecure, and unreliable, it remains ever-changing, inevitably transforming, and shifting in its nature. When there is suffering, please don't look anywhere other than just by asking, basically, am I holding on to an idea or a desire for permanency? Permanency of, let's say, if it's an undesirable experience, a sound, terrible sound, am I wanting this experience to be kind of cleaved off of my life? And just say, I want my moment, my hour, my day to be without this, meaning I'm looking for permanency of the other. Or if it's something really enjoyable, am I again cleaving it off of other possibilities and saying, no, I want this to be permanent, long-lasting. But because life is flowing constantly, the possibilities for it to change are 100%. So what happens? My longing for it to stay a certain way causes me to have suffering, causes me to have dukkha, causes me to have agitation. So again, by looking at your state, this is extremely important to understand, because what I'm referring to is the first noble truth. Most of us want to look away from, gaze away from dukkha, from suffering, and pretend that it's not there, or look at other causes for it to be there, and therefore go into full force to try to get rid of that pain without understanding. So understanding here refers to seeing that to be an attempt on our part to stop the flow of life, to stop the flow of reality, which means what? What Lord Buddha is saying, everything is shifting in nature, including this sound you're hearing that's like the screeching or this terrible noise coming from your neighbors. You want them to stop, maybe disappear completely off of the face of the earth. All of these things. What is that? It's just ear consciousness. Because another moment you might hear something else from somewhere else, and the ear consciousness shifted. Now your focus is somewhere else. Oh, you don't care about the neighbors anymore. What happened? Changing. Therefore, Bhikkhu, since the ear consciousness has arisen by depending on a set of conditions that are by their very nature impermanent, then how could it be permanent itself? So this gives you hope, always, to look at your own suffering Not just the great feeling of whatever it is. Let's say something that you're experiencing that's beautiful, hearing. But also to look at the difficult times you're having in life. And by just reminding yourself, hey, this too is changing. Ah, just to say that to yourself, take a moment. Like, this consciousness wasn't always there. Now it is, but that will also change. Now, bhikkhus, the triggering, the coming together, the uniting of these three things is called ear contact. And ear contact is also impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. Because the causes and conditions for the arising of ear contact are also impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. I might have mentioned I had a friend who was a big fan, who is a big fan of musical, concerts, especially, operas and things like that. He is a big fan of Bach, for example. And what he was doing was basically, he called me one day and he's like, "You're not going to believe what happened." And I said, "What?" He said, "I'm losing my hearing." And I knew how much this meant for him. I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yes." And I went and saw him and he was pretty depressed. He took in the beautiful, the most beautiful and exquisite of life's experiences through the ears, more so than he did with his palate and other senses. But now, I forgot which ear was, it was almost 99% gone overnight. He went and saw so many specialists. Eventually, they gave him one of those hearing aids, but I was surprised myself just to look at everything was fine. And then the next day, it stopped. This gave the meaning, a totally different appreciation for this teaching that I'm going with you over. The shifty nature, the transforming nature of something that we've always, quote unquote, had, but it's not the same. It's not going to stay the same. The eye is the same. Whoever among you wears glasses knows this. Especially if it's, like me, if I am not wearing my glasses, I have astigmatism and other stuff going on. Every time I go for a checkup, the doctor adds new, symptoms, I guess. Or I was like, oh, okay. Shifty. They're all shifty. They're unreliable. So if I took one condition out, where did the consciousness go? Could there be hearing? Bach's music might be playing over there, operas might be playing over there, and you're here, your hearing is not here. Your hearing is absent from here. One single ingredient, one condition was removed. The whole thing collapses. That's how unreliable this life is. Impermanent it is. This thing that we call my life. This is what I want from life. And this is what I'm working towards and getting. Yeah, but the odds are pretty much against us. To gain that sense of permanency in all of these things. And that's why it's that quintessential image of a donkey trying to grab hold of that carrot on a stick. That's what we've been doing to ourselves, and we do to ourselves the moment we wake up in the morning. Always looking for new experiences to try to bite. No, now. And then you go to an old individuals like seniors nursing home, ask them, and they're like, yeah, only they're trying to grab a bite off of that carrot on a stick. Still, that's how incorrigible the person is. That's how stubborn the person is. Nothing has been learned throughout a whole lifetime of having lived on this planet, because they've been looking at the wrong place for right answers. The answer is not in seeking permanency in things that are impermanent. That's what Lord Buddha is saying. It doesn't happen. And that's, by the way, another definition for a wrong view. To look for something to be permanent, but looking at the ingredients that are impermanent to begin with. So looking for the permanent in the impermanent, it doesn't work. Same thing with looking for the beautiful in what is ugly, repulsive. Look at the body. We want to stand in front of the mirror, put makeup on, do this, and go get work done, this, that, plastic surgery. Oh, look at me. I'm seeing this in Asia a lot. You know, they show you the before. They usually have an ugly picture of the person or something that's definitely been photoshopped. And then they show you, oh, this incredible. Oh, look at the complexion. It's so white. It's so, the eyes are plastic surgery through and through. But that's what they're selling as beauty. It's pretty ugly. So the person, the body, just cut the body open, look inside, or leave the body unwashed for a few days. Your body, not a dead body. Don't wash, don't put any deodorant for a few days on a hot day, humid day. You're going to notice less and less people want to be close to you. So what is that? That's another example of looking for the beautiful, so-called beautiful, in what is to begin with. Not. It's repulsive. There was a story once I read years ago. I was in my teens or early 20s. And this happened in India, I think, or somewhere in the Middle East, maybe India. And the king, the sultan, had a wife, and one of the wives, I guess, and in his harem. And one of his, I guess it's not courtiers, but I think an artist, someone who worked in the palace, falls in love with this woman who, you know, either the queen or the courtesan, one of the concubines, basically. And so they fall in love and they're together. So they're caught. They're caught. So immediately the courts, the guards come in, they want to, you know, they bring them both to the king, and the king is very upset, you know, always he feels cheated. And both of them say, we don't care what you do. You can kill us. Throw us to the lions. We love each other. Now that makes him even more mad. And one of his counselors, one of his, you know, advisors rather, comes in and whispers in the king's ear, and he says, Lord, Your Highness, I have a better idea. Why don't you, because they call themselves in love, leave them in a room. We can keep them guarded. Have them, their clothes removed. Let them be completely naked and give them exactly what they want. Put them together, but chain them together. So the king says, oh, what is that going to do? He says, trust me, my lord. So they put the bodies of these alive, you know, these two people naked, and put them like this. They chained them together like that. So, and they feed them, by the way. They have them drink water or whatever they want and feed them, you know, good food. Well, what happens? Nature calls. Okay, they hold it. They hold the gases in the body. They have to, you know, at least burp. They're trying to, you know, show a beautiful side of themselves to the partner. There's nobody around except for the guards, and the guards have their backs turned, but they're there in the room. Now they have to go to the bathroom. I know I'm giving you a very, graphic image, but these are realities that we don't look at, as far as looking at what is repulsive to begin with and trying to see the beautiful to come out of that repulsive. Well, you guessed it, after a few days, they just soil themselves on the other person. After a couple of weeks, and all the stench and the smells, the terrible smells in the room, because they have to go to the bathroom on each other. The king comes in from another room and says, what happened to that love? They say, just leave us. Just they can't stand each other. The chains come off and they run in opposite directions. These lovers, they were ready to die for that so-called love. Conditionality. We forget that if we remove some of the conditions, the whole thing falls apart. So the key thing is to have that tranquility of mind and stop telling ourselves a bunch of lies. Once bhikkhu's contact occurs, one then feels triggered by the contact. One perceives triggered by the contact, and one goes on intending triggered by the contact. Therefore, all these phenomena are in a state of perpetual flux. They're always moving, constantly. Insecure and unreliable, for they are ever changing, inevitably transforming and shifting in their nature. Years ago, as a couples therapist, I would notice like people would come in and they would say, couples, when I was a layman, they would come to the session and they would say, but he's changed, referring to their partner. Well, the other one goes, he's changed, she's changed, whatever. Life is changing. We have this projection of the other person, and we want this other person to always fit that mold. Well, we don't even fit a mold, let alone this other person that we try to control. So not only are we trying to control the senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, and whatever we're picking up from life, and then going into life and trying to change the circumstances around us to better fit our palate, but we're also doing that with a living, breathing human being. And that tells you something of how foolish we are. I was mentioning to a student yesterday how, Lord Buddha talks about, uses the term putujjana to describe a regular, ordinary person. But for years, I've been trying to see could there be a better English term, an adjective to describe that. This is a person that is on the far end of the Dhamma. As far as awakening is concerned, they're on the opposite extreme, if you will. And the term came to mind. The person is dense in the head, denser than a rock. You can put them in the middle of a Sangha. You can put them in front of the Dhamma, in front of the suttas for decades. They will still not get in. A rock might actually be more porous. Because if you've ever gone to a cavern, like when we were in KL, we went to the different caves, next to the Batu caves. You will see some... with so much patience, water finding its way through the rock. That's why you have calcification and all that, stalagmites and stalactites. But a putujjana is thicker than that. That's why the person keeps on wanting to find security in something that is, in essence, insecure. This world is an insecure place. Your body is an insecure place. Your relationships can never be secure. Your eyes, your ears, your tongue, your body, your nose, all of these things are insecure. But penetrating through all that mire, through all that fogginess of delusion, and to see this process gives you the security, the understanding. Because now your understanding is well placed, because it's based on what you have been experiencing to begin with. And your saddha develops, your faith develops, your confidence develops in seeing things how they are. Dhamma patu bhavo, to see how realities take shape, so-called realities, how phenomena take shape in front of your eyes. You're not fooled because you're seeing, oh, putto bhikkave sanjanati vedeti cheteti. Through contact, one perceives. Through contact, one feels. Through contact, one intends. Similarly, when the nose and odors come together, the nose consciousness arises, but the nose is impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting, while odors also are impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. I remember when I was a child, one of the neighbors came. We lived with the doors open in those days, in the 70s, and the world was a different place then. So there was so much trust, and neighbors, we would go in and out of each other's homes. It was like a big family. So the neighbor's daughter, who was the same age as my mom, she came one day and she offered my mom something like in a small cup, and she said, "Could you smell this? This is like such a terrible smell. I don't know what it is. Like, could you recognize this?" And my mom leaned over and smelled it, and she pulled back immediately. She's like, "Wow, that's a terrible smell." But since that day, and until the rest of her life, before she died, my mom lost the ability to smell. Whatever those chemicals were, I guess, they destroyed her olfactory senses in her nose. She went to doctors that they couldn't find a cause, and that's now, since that moment on, or prior to that moment, shall we say, she did have the ability to smell. But afterwards, for her, the rose lost its fragrance. Even something horrid as, some like wasted food, or spoiled food, or lost its terrible smell. So she would not be bothered as much as we would if, let's say, we took like the air, somebody was burning something, let's say, the smell would come in, and she wouldn't be bothered as far as the smell went. So these are not incredibly unique situations, but they are situations that happen because we all share these senses. But it's a very fickle affair. It's very unreliable. They could turn their back on us at any moment. So there's no reliability to be sought in any of these things. So it's not just old age that we should be afraid of. Many people are afraid of getting Alzheimer's one day, or dementia. Well, wait a minute. We don't even have to go 10, 20 years, if we live that long, down the road. Just look at your senses. They're unreliable. Therefore, because since the nose consciousness has arisen by depending on a set of conditions that are by their very nature impermanent, then how could it be permanent itself? Now, bhikkhus, the triggering, the coming together, the uniting of these three things is called nose contact. The nose contact is also nose contact is also impermanent, ever changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. because the causes and conditions for the arising of nose contact are also impermanent. And since the nose contact has arisen by depending on a set of conditions, then that are by their very nature impermanent, then how could it be permanent itself? So the contact also. Now, bhikkhus, once contact occurs, one then feels triggered by the contact. And this phrase, Lord Buddha repeats 6 times because of the 6 senses that he's addressing. One perceives triggered by the contact, and one goes on intending triggered by the contact. Anytime you can maintain some level of mindfulness, you can bring attention to what's happening with you. Whether you're basically feeling, let's use just feeling. Anytime you're feeling a certain way, you're having some emotion, or even you're about to do something, ask yourself the question, was this triggered by something? Was this emotion, excuse me, triggered by something? Would this thing that I'm about to do, is it triggered by something else? The thing that I'm about to say to this person. In all honesty, is it the result of me being or having been triggered by them? Or something internal like craving? Oh, I have to say it. I have to say it. Well, do I really have to say it? So it might very well be triggered by craving. Everybody's talking in a group and you're feeling left out. And then you feel like you have to say because your inferiority complex creeps in. And you have to say something. So what is that? You are being triggered by something. So do I really want to say it? Well, do I really have to say it? No, but I want to say it. Why? Because I'm triggered by this sensation. Something that is eating me up. Well, I have to say it because they're wrong. Okay, why do I feel so strongly about that? What am I feeling? Am I being triggered? You don't have to say this out loud so the other person can hear it, by the way. You're just doing this for yourself, for understanding. That's what I mean so many times when students go on explaining and things that are really personal to them. And without minimizing any of those things, I just ultimately try to come back to them and just point the finger back to them and say, this is all about you. Life, this whole thing that we call life is all about you. No one else. Somehow we've convinced ourselves that's the other way around. And you don't see yourself even in what's going on. Am I being triggered by something? That's a valid question to ask. Because that would allow you to come out of reactivity and settle in responsiveness. Because responsiveness means there's an element of, well, a pause and also reasoning, also even wisdom. If you have mindfulness, if you maintain that, sooner or later, there will be the trickling effect of paññā or wisdom coming in. Not someone else's. And no, paññā or wisdom does not come through books. Ultimately, it has to be brought out, discovered in the laboratory of your own life. Yes, the suttas, the discourses will help. The Dhamma discourses or a teaching can help, but that's not going to create wisdom for you. You are the door for it to show up. When you have sati and paññā, mindfulness and wisdom. Similarly, when the tongue and flavors come together, the tongue consciousness arises. But the tongue is impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting, while flavors are also impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. Same thing now, we're on the 4th. You go and try to have the a dish that you loved, let's say, or a drink, let's say a tea that you always loved, and you go and buy it the next time, and maybe the chef has changed at the restaurant, but the menu says the same item. The ingredients haven't changed, this, that. And then it happened to me once in Los Angeles. And I went to this Thai restaurant, and that's what I used to get, like a dish that it was everything that I needed. I would just eat it and leave. And then I went, and the person brought the dish, and I had it, and I was like, this is different. Something is wrong. Something tastes different. And I asked the person this and that, and he said, no, everything is the same. The waiter was the same person, so they knew. And it's like, I said, but there's something different. He said, maybe because we have a different chef now, a different cook. The condition was changed. So instead of fighting with the fact that this is it, then I use that as an opportunity to go into, oh, what's happening here? Can I use this as an opportunity for growth, to see of my attachment? No, it's supposed to be this way. Why did they change it? They didn't ask me. All these things happen. And because this dyad is constantly moving, insecure and unreliable, the dyad here is, as you recall, the tongue, that's the internal base at this point, and the flavor, the taste, that's the other. So that makes them a dyad. That dyad is ever changing and shifting, and as a consequence, the tongue consciousness too, because it's an outcome of these two, is going to be inescapably ever changing, just as exactly as its causes are. Therefore, bhikkhus, since the tongue consciousness has arisen by depending on a set of conditions that are by their very nature impermanent, then how could it be permanent itself? And Lord Buddha then uses that to also point the same thing occurring with the coming together of these three: the tongue, the taste, the tongue consciousness, and as a result, contact, tongue contact itself being inevitably transforming and shifting. So why are you surprised that it changed? Because they are changing. Now, bhikkhus, once contact occurs, one then feels triggered by the contact. Like the example I gave of my mother, and she's smelling the thing, let's say even lemon or something, she couldn't smell it after that day, that incident. There was no contact because she, in her case, did not have a fully functioning internal base, in meaning nose. It wasn't working anymore. So there is a discrepancy now. One of the dyad is missing. See, there's that also that we can use to look at the shifty nature of these conditions. Now we go to the fifth one, which is the body. Similarly, when the body and tactile objects come together, the body consciousness arises, but the body is impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting, while tactile objects are also impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. This is why some people are surprised when I actually tell them that we're, all of us, so long as we're not arahants, we're addicts. We're addicted to something. You want to go ahead and taste the same thing. Why? Because you have a liking for it. You have a, what we call, preference for this or that. I like to have this kind of clothing, tactile perception. Why? Because it makes me feel good. Well, what does that makes me feel good means, really? Basically, I'm trying to have a repeat experience of something pleasant that I've had before. And again, and again, and again, and again. Who tries to do that again? A drunk person does that. An addict does that. And we're trying to recapture a certain experience. So do you see now another nuance of it's all about you? We're always trying to capture something pleasant that has happened to us by trying to mimic or manicure or conduct situations in such a way where we could have a repetition of those circumstances, those conditions. So we're trying to fool ourselves. That's why we pay money and go and sit in a dark room with a whole bunch of people we don't know, turn off the lights so we can actually become mesmerized by whatever's playing on this white screen. A movie. And we really get upset every time or anytime somebody turns on the light or moves the drapes, the covers, and all of a sudden the light of day comes in, creeps in, and I was like, turn it off. I want to be fooled. Don't wake me up. That's why a lot of people don't like the Dhamma's essence, which is wisdom. They like to do the rites and ritual bit. Totally useless. Because it's easy. Right now, you have countless people going in and out of temples, in Buddhist temples around the world, making offerings, this and that, lighting candles, this and that. Yeah, it's cute. It's superficial. It's on the surface. Creates some kind of a coherence. Superficial, nevertheless, but it's helpful. Gives you that warmth, some level of comfort. But it's nothing compared to the Dhamma that Lord Buddha taught. It's meaningless when you compare to the teaching. That's the Dhamma. That's the Buddhist path. That is Buddhism. Not the temple, not these ceremonies, not these rituals. But people like to do that because it's easier than doing this, than sitting and meditating, working on themselves, doing this mental surgery. Mental surgery. Every time you're practicing mindfulness with sampajañña, with clear alertness, awareness, which brings in paññā, wisdom, you're doing very intricate work, mental surgery. You're carving yourself a new you. You're removing yourself from the category of being a dense putujana, as I was saying earlier. And absolutely we can. And that saddha is necessary, that faith. And yes, I too can taste what Lord Buddha is trying to say here. I know there's something here, and Bhante is giving us all these different examples. There's something there. I can't put my finger on, but it's something wonderful. Let me also experience what this would feel like, to see the conditionality of these things. That itself is so necessary. It's so beautiful. It brings this thing called Dhamma Chanda, which is the desire for Dhamma. Tiny little trickles of water that could support the seed to grow in you, and it could become this massive, huge tree, fruitful tree, upon which thousands and countless birds and other beings could thrive, and you can provide shade for millions of people over the centuries. These images I'm giving you to show you that there's so much that your life could do to bring happiness to you and everyone else around you. And that's the essence of Dhamma, ultimately. It's not just about somebody becoming awakened, sit under a tree, become a wise philosopher, like, sitting at the root of a tree type of a thing. Who cares ultimately? We also are very engaged. The Lord Buddha was an engaged teacher. He gave and gave and gave. But he discovered in himself first. And in the process, So that starts with the sense of desire. That's where your attention is going to go. So whatever you think about, that becomes your reality. Please don't forget that. So it's not just a series of good outlines or good pointers you're getting from this sutta or other suttas, and you write it somewhere. Wonderful, by the way. Those are necessary tools. But essentially, it has to do with bringing up the sense of desire in you to want to experience these things. Imagine where I'm no longer captivated by delusion. How would that feel? Could I see myself being happy? Could I see myself seeing through the delusion that others might still be falling prey to, or I used to be falling prey to? Can I come out of that? Ooh, that would be interesting. So your attention now goes away from looking at the repetition of certain experiences you've had and to look for something more meaningful that is based on wisdom. So now we go to the sixth one, because this was, I'm not repeating the remaining portion of the fifth, which was the body. By the way, all of the sutta, I recommend highly for you to go ahead and download. I uploaded it yesterday on the website, mindreleased.com, in the Pali Sutta section, and you have it there. So print it out or look at it on your reader, whatever, laptop, and go through every single section and take your time. And if you can print them out, that would be great too, because, and feel free to highlight certain areas, write your notes. Those I've found to be very useful. Number 6 would be, okay. Also, when the mind and mind objects, such as thoughts, come together, the mind consciousness arises. But the mind is impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting, while thoughts are also impermanent, ever-changing, inevitably transforming and shifting. Perfect example of this, if I think all of us have had similar experiences, you're feeling down, or you're feeling uneasy, you're feeling worried, you're somewhere, and then suddenly you get a phone call or a text, or you're outside and about, and then somebody shows up and they pull you out of that state you were in. How did that, where did that go? Where did that feeling go? Uneasiness, sadness, turmoil. Suddenly you're shifted into a different reality. Do you see what, Lord Buddha is also trying to encourage us here not to believe too much these experiences we're having. That's why I don't care much about poetry, where they take these experiences and they add finesse to it. They take a sight and they add so many beautiful adjectives to keep us captivated by that. And then we want to replay that in our head. Your life is already poetic if you know how to look at it. Every moment is so unique without being sticky-fingered, where we want to grab things and hold on to them, keeping them from becoming transformed into, well, the reason why it is in this state, because it's transformed itself from something else to this. It's just your preferences that have said, oh, stop, this is fine, don't change, here's fine. You can't do that. It's a futile attempt. It's a crazy attempt. I used to feel heartbroken every time I would see these panels that, I forgot what they're called. I had a friend who was a specialist at Cal Poly Pomona. He was a professor of insects, basically. And people would go hunting butterflies, capturing butterflies, and then putting them in these glass panels, sticking them down with these needles, killing the animal. so that I can keep it for posterity. I can show it to students. Yeah, go talk to the butterfly. You know, it was flying around in Costa Rica. You didn't have to kill it. Take a picture of it and draw it. You don't have to paint it. You don't have to kill it. But that's what we're trying to do with life. It's going, it's flowing. It's our attitude towards it. Am I wanting it to be changeless? This thing that is changing by nature. And because this dyad is constantly moving, insecure, unreliable, it remains ever changing, inevitably transforming and shifting in its nature. So I'm rushing here so that I can make it for my lunchtime. Now, because one's contact occurs, one then feels triggered by the contact, one perceives triggered by the contact, and one goes on intending triggered by the contact. Therefore, all these phenomena are in a state of perpetual flux, constantly moving, insecure. This, bhikkhus, is how consciousness is conditioned by two things coming together. Hence, it depends on a dyad. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I hope it has been an interesting sutta for you as well. Oops. Any questions you might have? Any questions? Here we go. Let me see if there's any hands up. Okay. I love the bit that Lord Buddha talks about. I mentioned a few times already. Kuto bhikkave vedeti. Because of contact, triggered by contact, we feel. Because of contact, we perceive. We remember. Because of contact, we intend. So I encourage you to remember those with you and bring that with you into your daily life. Yes, Sister Lim has a question.
Yes, Bhante, good day to you. Just a very quick question. You mentioned something about Vesak Day. Malaysians in particular, we visit the temples and we do dana, alms giving to the monk. And is that a rite or ritual? Because I feel that even though if it is seen as a rite and rituals, it is still positive because first the monks get their alms, the temples get their donations to do their action in compassion. So there's a little bit of is that a rite or ritual? Even though of course we feel good, but it's still positive. So is that a rite or ritual? I just want to know because there are some people who say, oh, that's a rite and ritual. So thank you.
Yes, it's a good question because I also mentioned it during the talk, of course. It definitely is part of rites and rituals. It's a big part of it. If what it can it be part of the practice? Of course. Obviously, Lord Buddha was the first one to encourage us of the importance of the upasakas and upasikas, the lay community, to support, because that is why we always encourage laity to offer dana. I mean, that's how we live. That's how I live. Now, when it becomes simply like we have to do this, we do this, it's a customary thing, we do this, then you've walked into the rites and ritual domain. Unfortunately, my experience throughout my life, actually, not just in Buddhist circles, but even years earlier as a Christian, I've seen this, where you look even with a set of tweezers, like, in a haystack, trying to find the meaning behind this, and you won't find it. Why? Because people have killed it. Now, years later, decades later, as a Buddhist monk now, I see this to be, unfortunately, the case. Where people go to the temple, they do the offering, they come out, sila is not there, Sometimes actually people say, well, I've done my dana, so I don't have to practice the 3 trainings. They believe that. And they also believe that they're not doing rites and rituals. So your belief has nothing to do with this. The intention is extremely important. Cetana is number 1, Lord Buddha talks about. Cetana is number 1. Now, you go ahead and you make an offering to a bhikkhu or to a temple, and you have the purest of intentions. You're thinking about nothing other than the Dhamma. But the bhikkhu, on the other hand, or the temple, might use that money that you worked so hard for, and you drove and you came all the way through traffic, and KL can be very much full of traffic, right? And you drove and you got there and you made this offering, and you had to wait in line. They use it for a different purpose. Adham. But nevertheless, one person in this dyad, to use the concept of dyad, one person, however, did have the right intention. That one person will benefit wholly. The other one will not. Okay? So one person came with Dhamma, the other one is living with Adhamma. This is one point that I would like to make in my response to you. Now, the other thing is, I've noticed a lot of carelessness throughout my life when people make offerings. They just think that their responsibility lies within, I'm making this food and just giving it so that, my grandmother used to tell me to, or my mother expects me to go and pay, put like in an envelope and do this, give. And that's the end. So my portion of the transaction is over. That is adhamma. And I've seen this for many, many years as a Buddhist upasaka, and now also as a bhikkhu, within Buddhist circles, I mean. So we need to be responsible. So there is a responsibility when you are giving dana. Let's not be fooled into thinking that there isn't. Absolutely there is. I've jokingly, when I was doing a retreat in Sydney, Australia, a few weeks ago, I mentioned how this happened to me in KL. This happened to me also, I think, when I was in Milan, where I would notice lay people or anyone who's, and they would scout with their eyes to see who's the most senior monk. Senior as in, how long they've been a monk. And sometimes they would really do some inquisitive work and they go around asking other people, so how many years has this been a monk, Why? Because somehow someone had told them, instructed them that if you go and make the offering to that one over there versus the other, you're going to gain more merits. You're actually doing better work if you're giving it to that older monk. This is adhamma, completely. This is complete nonsense. It's rites and rituals. And remember, one of the things that will drop, and one of the litmus test items, I call it, for being a sekha, meaning a person who has seen nibbana, meaning a sotapanna, stream winner, is the first thing that drops is your adherence to rites and rituals. You don't care about them anymore. And if you do dana, that comes purely from the heart. You're completely untouched by it. And it is pure dana. Now, unfortunately, many people don't have the ability to see that these days, as to who is a sekha and who is not a sekha, meaning who is a noble disciple and who is not. And that's why Lord Buddha would say, encourage people, give, because you don't know who you're giving to, even if it's a lay person. In the years that I've been teaching, I would tell, both as an upasaka and then as a bhikkhu, I would telling people that if you feel like you need to give something, let's say to a homeless person, okay, and then you were intending on giving it to the bhikkhu over there, who's living in a nice roof, like house, they have food, they have a car, they have transportation. But you saw this homeless person on the sidewalk. I encourage people to go ahead and change the direction. Use the temple to go and meditate, but give the red envelope to the layperson lying on the ground. Because you don't know if that person might be a noble disciple. You don't know, you can't tell. But we presume that the monk who's living in the temple must be a noble. No, that is wrong. There have been arahants in the last century who have come out, who even said, and they are absolutely right, in saying that in hell, it's well occupied with bhikkhus and bhikkhunis nowadays. There's countless monastics there in hell. Because when a person is making an offering, a layperson who's coming and giving their livelihood, their money to you, there's so much beauty there. The universe is conspiring to create something beautiful that to happen, but the other person doesn't deserve it. And there is such a thing. So that then means what I'm encouraging the people to do is to also bear the responsibility of the giving. So do your research. Don't go by simply the name of the person, how much following they have. Be scrutinizing. Does this person even live like a bhikkhu or not? Many bhikkhus today live like royalty, like celebrities. Ask yourself, not them. Do I see this person's behavior reflecting of what a bhikkhu is supposed to be? Well, I don't know what a bhikkhu is. Okay, then go ahead and find out. In the suttas, you need to look at the suttas, and then you need to look at the bhikkhu that you're venerating. This is what I saw a lot in KL. Okay? Not just in KL, Singapore, other places. You see this. In Los Angeles, I used to see this. So do your due diligence. So yes, it has a lot to do with you making the intention to give the offering, yes, but that doesn't get you off the hook, as they say in English. You have a lot of responsibility there. Am I promoting adhamma with this donation? Many people, unfortunately, are. But because of their intention being pure, they're not affected. However, the sasana is. When a bhikkhu doesn't sit down and meditate, when they just go into the temple to chant and chant and chant to get more supporters, when they add several wings to the temple, make it bigger, or buy or get more land that is never used, or is in fact is left to their family members somewhere. This is adhamma, folks. But how are they getting it? They're getting it from the laity. And that's one of the reasons why the sasana is dying, because there is irresponsible behavior on behalf of the laity, to at least not to call them out, saying, Bhante, with all due respect, I come from Metta. I just want to know, how is this behavior matching it? It's your right. You are giving us food. Please don't forget that. It's your responsibility. If you go to an eye doctor and your eye has glaucoma, and the doctor has all the degrees and all the licenses and certifications, and you look at their record and they've done thousands of these surgeries, you go in, and if you expect something from them, you didn't expect them to do a good surgery. In fact, the best surgery, because it's your eye. You don't go to a mechanic to do the job of fixing your eye. So these professions I hold tremendous respect towards. So we need to have that attitude. If the surgeon is saying, I'm a surgeon, well, they're doing the job of a surgeon. The mechanic is saying, I'm a mechanic, I'm fixing cars. I'll take my car to them. But if I'm taking my heart, my mind, my future to the temple, to the bhikkhu, Well, I'm supposed to expect from that bhikkhu guidance. And the best way to guide people is through role modeling in our area of expertise. And our expertise should be the life of a monastic that is not centered on money or building temples. It is first and foremost to make sure that I, as a bhikkhu, the person who's gone into the robes, has turned their back completely to the lay life. That's essential. Not to live like a lay life in clothing of a monk. That's disgrace. So the lay person has to see this and expect this, just the same way you expect a surgeon to be a surgeon. Not a surgeon who is by name or has the white uniform or name tag. No. So we have our expectations when it comes to other matter-of-fact situations in life, but when it comes to the temple, we expect something else. And that is wrong, completely. That is why it's turned into rites and rituals. That is adhamma. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Bhante Sadhu. Yes, certainly clarified that to my mind when somebody kind of asked this question to me. Thank you, Sadhu.
No. This is a very important question. I know we've discussed portions of this question when we were in KL together. So this is important, what many people need to hear around the world. This is not a problem with KL. Let me just assure you of that as well. This is a whole planetary problem. And it's not, to expand it further, it's not just a Buddhist problem, of course.
That's right.
You know, that's why majority of the churches and cathedrals in Europe are empty. Majority of churches in Italy are empty. And it has beautiful churches, empty. So, you know, there is the spiritual and the physical go hand in hand like this. But it has to be captivated. The teachings have to be captivated within, embodied rather, within the character, ongoing character, by the way. It's not a one time, you know, like 5 days a week they could live a spiritual life and the other 2 they can go and have fun, let's say in Vegas or something. No, sila has to be kept by the bhikkhu, number 1, because the monk is the role model. Even as a therapist, if you're saying something to your patients and the patients see that you're living a double life, guess what? They see you're a fraud. And there's fraudulent behavior throughout the religious world. And the Buddhists are not immune to that. So we have to call them out, our teachers, with respect, with metta, but validated by the teachings of Lord Buddha. You're not making up stuff. You're just keeping the same standards as you expect from your accountant when he's doing your numbers. You have more consideration, alertness when it comes to your own financial health than you do for your spiritual health. There's a problem. Whose fault is that? Mine, the person. So we need to have that much of a demanding attitude from our religious teachers. Despite what others say, despite, oh, well, he's very respected in society. Who cares? Would he be even able to stand for 5 seconds in front of Lord Buddha? That's a question. And if I know they don't keep sila, he won't even last a millisecond in front of Lord Buddha, out of shame. So we have to live as bhikkhus as if we're in the presence of Lord Buddha. So with that mindset, go and support any temples you wish. And it won't turn into rites and rituals, because you would be offering it to Lord Buddha himself. So happy Vesak to all of you. Let us share, transfer some merits. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Lokasasanam. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Desanam. Akasatha Chabumata Deva Nagamahidika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mamparanti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be well. May the Triple Gem bless you all and all your loved ones, those who are alive in the physical form and those who have passed on. And whenever you say sadhu loudly, the devas around you will rejoice. And because they can only share in the merits because you're in the form that the teacher here is in the form of a physical human body. When you say sadhu, they also feel that generosity from you. They rejoice. And as we have the levels of the cosmic realms, they get to be echoed into higher and higher realms. These things exist, by the way. And so please don't belittle every single sadhu you say. Sukhi hontu. Until next week.